Good evening. We're coming to you from New Orleans, where there's this really stark picture right here at Bourbon Street. This is the entrance to Bourbon Street, and this is what it looks like tonight. Over there, that is Department of Homeland Security. They've got the turret open. They've got some officers staged in full gear at the top, and there are officers all around this area. But Bourbon Street is open, and this is so important for the city of New Orleans. This was a crime scene yesterday, and yet this is the heartbeat of the city. This here is where there was a police car, a police cruiser that was parked to try to prevent traffic from coming down here on New Year's. You've actually got, ironically, you can see here, this is where bollards used to be. We understand that the bollards were not installed because of some sort of problem. That is something that we're reconsidering at possibly installing again going forward. But what we saw that night was the truck, that F-150, up onto the curb right here, and turn back onto the road and then just start that trail of carnage. We're going to walk through here. We're going to be respectful because there's a memorial right here. This is a memorial to the 14 lives that were lost, 15 in total, 1 terrorist dead, and then 14 other people that were taken too soon. And the other thing that a lot of people here are talking about tonight is these right here. You can see this. This is a temporary barricade. We watched these go in today. It took about 5 minutes for those to be installed, and then they installed this barricade as well. But that is making so many people angry today, is seeing how quickly it is to install those things and then wondering where were those on the night of New Year's when this area was filled with so many different people. And then this is a stretch. This is a look at Bourbon Street where that truck went barreling through. One of the most haunting things that I've heard is that because that truck was electric, a lot of people never even heard it coming. You expect when there's acceleration that a truck would rev its engines. This one was a silent killer as it went straight through. Some people were able to jump out of the way, seeing it coming. Some people were able to be pulled out of the way from some of the heroics that we've seen in this surveillance video. But tragically, 14 people lost their lives here. And then just down the way, there were about 35 people that were also injured. All of this happening in a matter of moments, and so many people were still inside of these clubs being kept there as the police kept them inside trying to figure out what was going on. Then they realized that the terrorist had been planting bombs here along Bourbon Street, 2 different pipe bombs along the street in these coolers, these blue coolers, and they were set with nails that were supposed to explode, and they would have done so much more carnage. All of that happening about 2 o'clock in the morning. 3 o'clock in the morning is when he came barreling down with the truck. But so many questions tonight, and we're going to start off with Tom Llamas as he sets the scene for what we're seeing today.
Tonight, this new video showing the high-speed terror attack in the early hours of New Year's Day.
We got a white horn. I need EMS. I can now in Bourbon now.
People celebrating on Bourbon Street in New Orleans, scrambling to dodge that white pickup truck the FBI says was driven by 42-year-old Texas-born Shamsuddin Jabbar. He died after crashing into a crane and getting into a shootout with police. This photo showing the truck and a black wheelchair belonging to Jeremy Senke, who was knocked to the ground.
Cops were looking at me, and I know at this time that they were looking at me because I was still alive, and they knew I was still alive. So I'm screaming, and finally somebody came over to me and just looked at me and said, "Listen, we know you're hurt, but you're alive." That's what they said to me, "You're alive."
But his legs were broken, and tonight he's still in shock over the killings.
I'm not against anybody like that. I love everybody. I love everybody, and I just can't believe that would happen.
14 people killed in the attack, dozens more injured and hospitalized. University Medical Center, New Orleans, treating the most critically wounded.
We had a mix of both blunt and penetrating trauma. We had patients that were injured from the vehicle going down the street, as well as some with gunshot injuries.
Authorities now searching Jabbar's Houston home, as well as a residence where he stayed in New Orleans, locating 3 cell phones and 2 laptops. And tonight, piecing together more information about the man who had an ISIS flag on the truck he used in the attack. We now know he was an Army veteran who at one point deployed to Afghanistan, worked as a realtor, property manager, and beginning in 2021, an employee at financial consulting firm Deloitte. but also, more recently, someone who posted videos expressing his desire to kill and his inspiration from ISIS. 5 videos the FBI says posted to Facebook in the moments before his deadly rampage.
In the first video, Jabbar explains he originally planned to harm his family and friends, but was concerned the news headlines would not focus on the, quote, war between the believers and the disbelievers.
In this YouTube video posted 4 years ago, Jabbar is seen promoting himself as a trustworthy real estate agent because of his time in the military.
I spent 10 years as a human resources specialist and IT specialist, where I learned the meaning of great service.
But he appeared to be struggling financially, going through a divorce several years ago. According to public records obtained by NBC News, he lost $28,000 with his business in 2021, owed $16,000 in credit card debt, and wrote to a divorce lawyer in 2022 saying, "I cannot afford the house payment. It is past due in excess of $27,000 and in danger of foreclosure if we delay settling the divorce." According to family members who spoke to the New York Times, Jabbar was raised Christian but converted to Islam and recently had been barred by his ex-wife from spending time with their 2 daughters after acting erratically. The FBI says Jabbar claimed to have joined ISIS before the summer of 2024.
This was an act of terrorism. It was premeditated and an evil act.
The FBI, which initially said it did not believe Jabbar was solely responsible for the Bourbon Street attack, now says he appears to have acted alone, renting the pickup truck on December 30th and driving from Texas to New Orleans on the 31st.
We do not assess at this point that anyone else involved in this attack is involved in this attack except for Shamsuddin Jabbar.
According to the FBI, Jabbar also placed 2 explosive devices in coolers near the scene of the attack. One at the cross-section of Bourbon and Orleans Street, the other at an intersection 2 blocks away. 2 senior law enforcement officials say both devices contained nails inside of them and had receivers for remote detonation.
We did obtain surveillance footage showing Jabbar placing the devices where they were found.
And authorities are investigating a fire at the New Orleans house where Jabbar is believed to have stayed, saying it started after Jabbar was killed. Its cause unclear.
She was a loving, caring person. She loved her son.
Jessica Carvajal now among those in mourning. Her sister, Nicole Perez, killed in the attack. She leaves behind a 5-year-old boy named Melvin.
Do you remember the last thing you guys said to each other by any chance?
She texted me at 12 o'clock at night telling me, "Happy New Year, sis. I love you so much." And I told her I love you too. And I didn't know that was going to be her last text message.
In New Orleans today, Bourbon Street reopened ahead of the Sugar Bowl. The college football game delayed a day because of the attack.
We have brought in heavy trucks.
The police superintendent assuring people her city and their iconic street are safe.
Tom Llamas joins us live here on Bourbon Street. I mean, such difficult interviews. And yet, Jeremy, what a story of a miracle almost. Tell me a little bit more about what he went through that night.
Yeah, well, you're talking about a man who was already paralyzed prior to the terror attack. He was on Bourbon Street having a good time with friends and family. He was on his way home when the attack happened. And you can see from the image that we had in our story there where the pickup truck ends, where it crashed a few blocks down here into a crane. His wheelchair was right next to that. He got launched into the air. He landed on his face. He's sort of still in shock. I mean, he cried a lot, as you can imagine, because he can't believe he's alive. He can't understand why a military veteran would do this to other Americans. Both his legs are broken, and he doesn't have a lot of recollection of what happened in the moments right before the attack. But he does remember those horrific seconds and minutes when he woke up on the ground screaming for help. But one of the things he said that really stood to me, that just kind of shows you how sort of just dark and vile the whole entire moment was, as he's on the floor screaming for help, he's looking up and people are shooting videos of him and taking pictures of him, and no one is helping him. And he was just so confused until the police came up to him. And the police, essentially to calm him down, said, "Listen, you're alive. There are a lot of people dead here." And that's when it hit him what had happened.
And there were so many people that were dead on this street. It was almost a triage situation. And some of those people hadn't died, and they ended up dying. It was there was a little bit of a delay to get ambulances in here and to get that medical treatment going. But I do want to ask, about the ones that survived, like him, that are also in the hospital? Any update? I mean, over 30 people that are still recovering?
We were at that hospital, University Medical Center of New Orleans. They told us that the vast majority of people that came in have survived. One person didn't make it, but they've been able to save several lives there. They've discharged about a dozen people so far. There's still a lot of people that are recovering, a lot of bone injuries, some trauma to the head. Most of the people were people that were either hit or run over by the truck, but there were some gunshot victims as well.
And Tom, the Sugar Bowl just ended. Bourbon Street has reopened. I'm not sure if people can hear, but I mean, it's getting loud, getting kind of rowdy throughout tonight. A lot of people at home are going to be watching this, and they're going to say, wait a minute, this is way too soon. And yet you went to school here, you know the culture here. Can you talk to us about the reconciliation of mourning with celebration, with jubilation, and how that all plays?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I'm just speaking frankly here. This is a bit strange, right? I love New Orleans. I have a lot of roots here. It's a great city. Got married here. Went to school here. But I will say, I mean, they've just been through a traumatic situation. 14 people died here. You can hear the music. The bars are open. New Orleans, it thrives on tourism. These are all businesses down here that need to make money to keep people employed, to keep people in their homes, to keep people paying their bills. I mean, this is people's livelihood. Bourbon Street is one of the biggest money makers in this entire state, right? In the entire South, I would argue, if you don't include Texas. So they kind of had to open for the livelihoods of a lot of people. But you're right. There was a football game played. This is open. There's drinking and celebrating. And 14 people died. I will tell you this, Bourbon Street right now, as we take live looks at Bourbon Street, it's not as packed as it usually is. It's not nearly as packed as it would be during this time. And it's because there was a terror attack here less than 2 days ago. It's strange, but this is their city. The FBI has given Bourbon Street back to the city of New Orleans. They have decided to reopen with security precautions in place. And this is the reality, and this is what they want to do. And you're hearing it from officials. They want to move forward because New Orleans sort of survives in a lot of ways, at least the tourism industry, through these big events, Mardi Gras, Jazz Fest, the Sugar Bowl, the Super Bowl in about a month. So they need the crowds to come back. They need the people here. It's a decision they made, and they're going to have to live with it.
And we were talking to a musician earlier today, and they said they very vividly remember what happened after 9/11. And 9/11, this whole area was dead for months and months, and so many people lost out on their livelihoods. It was a very, very rough time for this this area. So, Tom, really appreciate your expertise. Thanks so much for your reporting.
Thank you.
And with us now is terrorism expert and founder of CEO at Cloudburst Technologies, Evan Coleman. Evan, we keep hearing about ISIS, but has ISIS claimed responsibility? And even if they weren't involved directly, like, wouldn't they want to claim responsibility here?
Yeah, I mean, you will likely see a claim of responsibility for ISIS. They usually take a day or two to kind of, evoke a sense of responsibility. But you have to be very careful here. This is a group that oftentimes takes credit for these acts that are carried out by lone wolves. Sometimes these individuals have been in direct contact with the organization. Sometimes, in the claim of responsibility, they'll say something to the effect of someone inspired or a wolf inspired or a wolf aligned with us or whatever, right? At this point, there's really no reason to believe that ISIS provided this individual with any direct contact or expertise. And even if they did, the truth is that everything that he needed to carry out this attack, he could have learned indirectly from training manuals and other materials that are widely available on extremist channels on the internet. So, it's interesting to see whether or not they will, but I don't know if it bears much relevance in terms of who actually carried this out, who planned it, who funded it. As far as we know right now, and as all the best evidence is really pointing to, this was the act of a single disturbed individual. And especially if you look at some of his, apparently what he's been claiming, or what he claimed in these videos released, suggesting that he was first considering attacking his own family. That doesn't really sound like something that ISIS would have, directly ordered him to do, obviously. Again, they can claim credit for it. They get publicity out of it, but that doesn't necessarily mean they really did it.
Investigators, they were talking about in his videos that he posted on that social media platform, he was saying that he got inspired in the summer of 2024. Like, just thinking about that timeline, has ISIS been super active recently? And what about that ideology would make them target Bourbon Street?
This is the first element that everyone should be asking themselves. The heyday of ISIS was almost 10 years ago. It was 2016, right? If this individual was really principally inspired by ISIS, why didn't he carry this act out all the way back then, right? And as you pointed out, for the last 4 to 5 years, ISIS has honestly been up on the ropes. They have been struggling for resources. They've recently had several of their leaders taken out again. There have been U.S. airstrikes targeting their camps in Syria. There's no reason to believe this is a group that's experiencing some kind of significant resurgence, particularly not internationally. But that's the point, is they only need to recruit one disturbed moron to make a statement here, right? And they've achieved that. But yeah, why would he be motivated in the last year? ISIS hasn't really achieved very much in the last year. They've carried out a couple of significant attacks, but none of them were in the United States. None of them were targeting Americans directly. And the most recent major attack that involved a ramming incident was over in Germany. And that involved someone that had nothing to do with ISIS or Islamic extremism or anything like that. So, you really have to start asking yourself, how much was this person radicalized by politics, and how much were they radicalized by, issues in their own personal life that might have contributed to this sense of alienation and, again, willingness to go out and hurt innocent people. Would ISIS like to attack New Orleans? Sure, they would. They'd like to attack any American city, right? But again, would ISIS encourage someone to murder their own family in order to make a political statement? That doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, he had a global war on terror service medal when he served in the military. I guess if I'm hearing you correctly, there's terrorism, which is all about warfare, asymmetric warfare, and then there are just deranged individuals that may have violence in their heart and they want to commit that violence, and so they grab onto an ideology. Obviously, we're calling him a terrorist. What we've seen so far supports him being a terrorist, but as we go forward in this new world that we live in, is there something else that's, I guess, are we lacking a word for these types of deranged individuals that just want to commit acts of violence?
That is the face of terrorism today. I mean, if you're an individual who's attracted to these groups, you're not going overseas to a training camp in Afghanistan or Syria or Iraq. That doesn't happen anymore, right? There's no way of doing that, and these groups have long since given up that idea. These days, terrorism is generally lone wolf extremists who are being recruited, oftentimes indirectly via propaganda on the internet. Occasionally, they might have direct contact, again, via the internet, like over apps like Telegram and whatnot. So they've never actually been there. They're being recruited at arm's length. But, groups like ISIS have also realized that the chance that they're able to carry out a catastrophic attack on the level of 9/11 inside the United States using foreign nationals trying to get through U.S. borders, guess what? The likelihood of that succeeding is very, very low, right? But while they are up against the ropes and while they have no resources and while they can't train people at camps, they can still lure vulnerable people like this individual, and they can brainwash them and they can use them as pawns. But, truthfully, this goes beyond ISIS, it goes beyond Al-Qaeda, it goes beyond Islamic extremism, because the same exact phenomenon is occurring with other political philosophies as well. We've seen individuals on the left, on the right, same idea, right? These people are being recruited indirectly over the internet. It's difficult to detect them. It's difficult to stop them. And it's also difficult to know when they have reached the point where it's not, simply rhetoric on the internet and they're actually going to do something terrible. Obviously, this person slipped right through the safety net.
The weaponization of copycat crimes in the West, such a weird time we live in. Evan Coleman, we really appreciate your insight. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
And meanwhile, about 60 to 70,000 people are right now filing out of the Superdome after watching the Sugar Bowl less than a mile away from here. That game was postponed. It was supposed to be played yesterday, but officials pushed that back to harden security, and that's exactly what we saw today. A big increase in law enforcement presence both inside and outside of the stadium. That included bomb-sniffing dogs, local police, FBI, helicopters, expanded security all around the Superdome there. And despite yesterday's tragedy, fans from both Notre Dame and Georgia showed up to the big game in huge numbers. Jesse Kirsch has more from the Super Bowl.
Hey, Gotti, let's put this game into context. The Sugar Bowl being played here today into tonight is something that is under scrutiny both for what has happened and what could happen, because this is also the site of the Super Bowl next month. And after the security failures of New Year's Day on Bourbon Street, this event under that much more of a microscope. And so what I can tell you, having gone in there to watch some of this game and see what the experience was like, let me tell you a couple things I noticed. First of all, when I actually went through the metal detector area where they would do a bag check and all of that at any major sporting event these days, I did not notice anything that stuck out, felt different, and in fact, I got through in a matter of seconds. So, of course, we don't know if that had anything to do with staffing, if that had anything to do with the flow of, more available entrances, anything like that. But just that was an interesting introduction as we made our way inside. As you're approaching down the street, you see armored police vehicles. You see law enforcement teams with long guns. Very clearly, very visibly, a show of force from authorities here. But once I was inside, largely, it looked like and felt like a normal game. If you had brought someone to the game who had not had any knowledge of the events here over the last 48 hours, and you dropped them right in their seat in the middle of the game, they may not realize at all that something was different in this city this week. They had a moment of silence. It was well before the crowd was reaching capacity. It was close to around 30 minutes before the actual kickoff. The stadium was probably only around 60% capacity ballpark at that point. So after that, it just felt like you were at a big college football game. For better or worse, that's just what it looked like in there. But I can tell you, walking around on the concourses, I saw an FBI SWAT team in camouflage. I saw DHS, Department of Homeland Security, police. So there were law enforcement, federal law enforcement personnel on the concourse. And that just speaks again to this visible heightened sense of security here in light of everything that's happened. And just again, Gotti, to bring it full circle, we're talking about a venue that was not just under scrutiny for this event after what happened on New Year's Day, but this is the venue for the Super Bowl next month, a global event and something that is always a high security priority and that much more under a spotlight because of what's happened here this week. Thankfully, this game began without any incident here, best we can tell. Of course, we might hear of some arrest or something like that later on, but it felt like a normal game when we went inside. Gotti?
Jesse Kirsch at the Sugar Bowl tonight for us. Jesse, thank you. And turning now to the Cybertruck explosion outside of Trump International Hotel out there in Vegas right now. Officials say there's no definitive link between that and what happened here in New Orleans, but they have identified a 37-year-old Matthew Allen Livensberger as the subject of their investigation. He was an active duty, decorated U.S. Army soldier, a Green Beret, in fact, on approved leave at the time of the blast. Here's what else they shared about him earlier today.
His body is burnt beyond recognition, and I do still not have confirmation 100% that that is the individual that was inside of our vehicle. We also discovered through the coroner's office that the individual had sustained a gunshot wound to the head prior to the detonation of the vehicle.
Let's bring in NBC News correspondent David Noriega with the latest, because people at home are definitely going to have questions after seeing all this laid out. We're being told no connection to what happened here in New Orleans to what happened in Las Vegas. But people at home are seeing two attacks involving bombs on the same day, two men with military experience, two rented electric trucks that were picked up days before all of this happened. What do we know about this suspect and the timeline of events as they happened in Vegas there?
Yeah, Gotti, two vehicles rented from the same sort of unusual car rental company. The two men were of roughly the same age. There are indications that they served in some of the same military facilities. That said, the Army is a huge institution. It is not known that they did, in fact, cross paths. It is still possible that this is a coincidence or a series of coincidences, although the authorities are saying that there is no definitive link as of yet. Now, as far as Matthew Allen Livensberger, the person believed to have died in the Cybertruck explosion in in Las Vegas. First of all, although authorities are stopping short of 100% confirming that that is the person who died in the truck, there is a lot of evidence to support the idea that he is, and they believe that that was the person. That there were tattoos that matched, on the body, tattoos that matched known tattoos of Mr. Leibelsberger's. There were multiple IDs in the car belonging to him. There were 2 firearms in the car that the ATF knows he had purchased legally just days prior. It is with one of those firearms that they say Mr. Leibelsberger shot himself before this sort of crude explosive device, if you can even call it that, detonated in the vehicle. Gadi, the really big missing piece of information here is motive. A lot of people are assuming there is some kind of motive here because this was a Tesla Cybertruck and it was parked directly outside of the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas. However, we at this point do not know what that motive was. One, I think, pretty interesting clue as to what Leibelsberger's intentions may have been is the fact that authorities say that a person with his degree of military experience would have been more than capable of building a much more sophisticated, much more effective, and much more damaging explosive device if he had wanted to. What they found in the car instead was sort of, a pile of consumer-grade fireworks, not even commercial-grade fireworks, and other explosive materials. Like they mentioned, for example, explosive targets like you can buy at a sporting goods store. So authorities believe that he could have done more damage if he had wanted to, and the fact that he didn't is maybe, stress on the maybe, a clue as to what his intentions were and whether his intention was to hurt other people or simply to die by suicide. Gadi?
And when it comes to his motive, I mean, one thing that would be very helpful in this investigation is if you could see inside of the cab of that Cybertruck, and we know that Tesla does have cameras inside the cab of the Cybertruck that may have been a recording. Do we know if investigators may be able to get some of that video?
I think it depends largely on the extent of damage to the vehicle. We also know authorities said that Elon Musk actually is sending Tesla personnel to assist in the investigation. We also know that they have been able to recover some data related to the vehicle. For example, they used data related to the vehicle to track his movements from the place where he rented the car in the Denver area and along all of the stops that he made on his way to Las Vegas to charge that vehicle at Tesla charging stations. I mean, you're right. Teslas in general are big sort of data harvesters. There's not just cameras, but they produce a ton of data, and that is going to be a major focus for investigators. Not just that, but also personal electronic devices that were found inside the vehicle, specifically a phone and a smartwatch. Authorities said that investigators are going to be focusing a lot of their attention on that phone and that smartwatch to see what kind of evidence they can find as to Leibelsberger's motives. There is also, of course, social media presence. People are kind of sifting through his social media, talking to his family, talking to his known associates, just to get a sense of what compelled him to do this. Gadi?
David Noriega with such a bizarre case out there in Las Vegas. David, thanks so much for joining us tonight. And we are now joined by Jim Kavanaugh. He's an NBC News terrorism analyst, retired special agent in charge, ATF. Jim, thanks so much for being with us. This obviously hits close to home for both Trump and Elon Musk. Do you think that that's going to change the nature of that very high-profile investigation now?
No, you really wouldn't, Gadi. I mean, the agents that get the bombings, ATF and the FBI, and certainly the Metropolitan Police in Las Vegas, they're going to work that just like they would any other bombing. They're very aware of, the Cybertruck and Elon Musk and the president, of course. But unless there's a specific threat directed at the president, they would probably be alerting the Secret Service of that. But that didn't appear to be the case here. It looks like what it was, and you're talking about motive appropriately, and I would discern the motive here, having worked car bomb suicides before, that it is a spectacular suicide. And that's what he wanted out of it, a spectacular suicide. Good discussion on the explosives where the ATF assistant special agent in charge at the press conference mentioned that. And it's a good discussion. Yes, he's a Green Beret and he is capable, but he's stationed in Germany. So he doesn't have access to military explosives. The military keeps their explosives locked up. I've worked a lot of thefts from their bunkers. And the commercial explosives are ATF, make sure they're locked up by all the construction companies. Now, there's stolen explosives and so forth, but you have to have time to make a plan to get all that. So he had ability, but he didn't have the materials. And I would say, just to close here briefly, the way that transpired when he was driving around Las Vegas and the venues just prior to the detonation, he was just working up for his suicide. And then when he pulled under the Trump canopy there, what I think he did is he used a military fuse lighter, a non-electric military fuse lighter. And it has a pin on it, like a hand grenade, and you pull the pin, and it fires a time fuse. And that time fuse will burn for whatever length, you cut the fuse for. You can, say, set it for 15 seconds. Because he's got to do that. He's got to initiate the explosives before he shoots himself. And he didn't, he needs a little time because he doesn't want to die in the blast. So I think he pulled the military fuse lighter, because all the military guys will have those things laying around, and we used to have a bazillion of them. And then he shoots himself. Well, the first thing you start to see in the car is the fire, and then the smoke from the tires. And the reason is you can't put out that military time fuse. You can't put it out. I mean, you'd have to, you can stomp on it, it won't go out. And what it's doing is it's igniting the carpet and whatever's in the car. It's igniting any flammable materials. In the first videos, you see the smoke from the tires, and then you see the detonation. And of course, because that thing's built with stainless steel, it was like a cannon. Just like we have our bomb vehicles. It just shot the charge straight out. It didn't even dent the backs of the quarter panels on the back of the truck.
I mean, you make a very, very compelling argument, as I believe you said, a spectacular suicide being very much an option here. And yet, officials are saying there's no clear link yet. But online, everybody is, wanting to draw up some conspiracy here. And there are a lot of striking similarities, like very, very striking similarities that even officials will acknowledge. Let's take a quick listen to what they were talking about earlier today.
Both of the subjects served at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. What we do know about that is it's a very large military base, and we have no record that they served in the same unit or even at the same years at Fort Bragg. They both served in Afghanistan in 2009. We don't have any evidence that they were in the same province in Afghanistan, the same location, or the same unit.
And Jim, again, your explanation, like I am going to be thinking about that all night, but if we can just talk hypotheticals here, because it is something that a lot of people online are talking about, the possibility of sleeper cells here in the United States. And we're not saying that that's what this is, but it is very much a part of the conversation happening out there. So I figured we'd get your insight with your expertise. How does the United States prepare for the possibility of sleeper cells?
Well, all the intelligence is really spun up. So if there's any group working, I mean, they're going to pick up on it quick. I think the way this guy slipped through in New Orleans, he was a mad dog. And again, a lone man dog. He had no other connections. And this guy in Vegas is a spectacular suicide. I would align him much with like the Christmas Day bomber in Nashville, Christmas morning a few years ago. He's downtown in the entertainment district at 6 a.m. on Christmas morning. There's no one there. He has a spectacular suicide with a bomb. This is basically the same thing. He goes from Colorado to a big venue that everybody knows, but he goes at 7 a.m. There's nobody there. He does the same thing. He uses the Cybertruck and Trump Hotel for effect and attention, but in effect, it's not connected to ISIS. This guy's not ISIS. The commanders looked at those leads. I looked at them too. I mean, I'm thinking, oh, the military, the rental car. Let's look at all this. But a lot of times they don't pan out, and in life there's a lot of coincidences. There always is a lot of coincidences. So there's no evidence. So they're two separate events in my estimation, unless other facts are uncovered.
No one calls it like they see it like you. Jim Kavanaugh, really appreciate your insight tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Scotty.
And as with all tragedies, we really do spend so much time talking about the killers who did this and not enough time talking about the victims. So we do want to tell you about one of those victims in yesterday's attack, 37-year-old Reggie Hunter. This was a father of two boys from Baton Rouge here in Louisiana. Reggie worked as a manager at a warehouse, was on Bourbon Street with his cousin when this attack happened. Joining us now is Reggie's cousin, Sherelle Jackson. Our deepest condolences to you and your family. Thank you so much for being here with us on this difficult night. Please help us tell Reggie's story here. When was the last time you heard from him?
Thank you for having me. The last time we had communication with Reggie was shortly after New Year's night. We all was aware that he was going to New Orleans to celebrate the New Year, but we discussed in a group family text message, Happy New Year, I love you, and the messages just came in from one family member to the other. That's the last communication I had with Reggie.
Oh. And the cousin that he was with, do we know how he's doing?
Yeah, he's doing well. He's in the hospital. He's still recovering, but for the most part, he's going to be okay. He's doing well.
And what do you want people to know about Reggie tonight?
Reggie was a wonderful person, life of the party, great sense of humor, would make anyone feel welcome when he was in the room. He's the person that's going to walk up and speak to you. You don't have to speak to him. He's going to speak to you. A lot of love in his heart, a great father, someone that we're deeply, deeply going to miss.
Our prayers go out to you and your family. I do want to ask, one of the things that we've seen here in Louisiana and here in particular on Bourbon Street is this resilience, right? There's no way, as a lot of the people that we were talking to are like, we're not going to let the terrorists win. This isn't going to stop us. We have to fight back. And part of them fighting back is coming out here tonight. And yet, for people outside of this state or for family members that are watching this, seeing what's happening out here on Bourbon Street, it may seem a little strange. What do you think Reggie would make of tonight?
This right here is what, from my cousin's perspective, what I think he would say: live your life. Don't let the act of one person make you put your life on hold. New Orleans is a beautiful city. Louisiana is a wonderful state. We want people to come here. New Orleans is a safe place. We just had Taylor Swift here a few weeks ago. Millions of people were here. No incident. You can't live your life letting like a deranged person put your life on hold and stop you from having fun. It's a beautiful city. It's a great place. We welcome everyone to come. Yes, have common sense, use better judgment, but come to New Orleans. Enjoy our food, enjoy our hospitality. Let New Orleans be that beautiful city that it is. And we have to keep going. We have to keep fighting and pushing forward. We are a resilient city. That's what we're known for. And we're going to carry forward. We're going to move on. And I know that's what Reggie would want.
Well, thank you so much for helping us keep Reggie's memory alive, Sherelle. So sorry about what your family is going through, and our hearts go out to all of you tonight.
Thank you.
And we'll be right back after this break.
Welcome back. I'm Valerie Castro, co-anchoring tonight with Gotti Schwartz. Here are some of the other headlines we're following. Power in Puerto Rico is restored tonight after nearly the entire island was in the dark on New Year's Eve. The blackout impacted over 1 million utility customers. A major electric company there warned there may still be temporary outages in the coming days. The cause is still being investigated, but a broken electric line could be the culprit. At least 10 people were shot outside a nightclub in Queens, New York last night. A private event was going on at the club when multiple gunmen opened fire. They're all still on the run, and police are looking into if the shooting was gang-related. Federal agents searched the home of a former top New York City cop. Jeffrey Madry is accused of demanding sex from a subordinate in exchange for extra pay. He resigned last month, admitting to having a consensual relationship with the accuser, but denies any sexual misconduct. Montana is upping its minimum wage, bringing it to $10.55 an hour. That's up from the current wage at $10.30 an hour. State law there requires yearly increases to keep up with inflation. A pretty big meteor shower is about to be on full display. The quadrantid shower is going to peak early tomorrow morning. It will be the first one of the new year, and if you're lucky, you could spot a whole bunch of shooting stars. This type of shower produces bright and colorful meteors. And the drama between actress Blake Lively and her It Ends With Us star Justin Baldoni continues this week after 2 new lawsuits were filed on New Year's Eve. Baldoni is now suing the New York Times, seeking $250 million in damages over its reporting on Lively's allegations against him. He claims the article relied on the actress's self-serving narrative while being filled with inaccuracies. On the other side, Lively also filed a new federal lawsuit against both Baldoni and the production company involved in their movie. This follows her civil suit for sexual harassment during the filming of It Ends With Us. That suit she filed earlier in December. There's quite a bit to unpack here and break it all down as criminal defense attorney Misty Maris. Misty, this is confusing. It seems a little messy. Who is suing who, and what is at the root of all these accusations?
Yes, Valerie, there's a lot going on in these 2 cases, and there are 2 different lawsuits and 2 different legal theories. So we have Justin Baldoni and other plaintiffs who were involved in the production of It Ends With Us and his PR team. They are suing the New York Times under a legal theory of libel, meaning they're accusing the New York Times of publishing inaccurate information, false statements that resulted in damage to their reputation. That's the Baldoni lawsuit. The other lawsuit is Blake Lively against Justin Baldoni, the production company of It Ends With Us, and others involved with his PR team. Now, that lawsuit is about sexual harassment and retaliation. She alleges there was improper conduct on the set of It Ends With Us. She reported it, and in retaliation for her reporting these complaints of improper conduct and sexual harassment, a PR smear campaign was concocted by the defendants. So those are the 2 lawsuits. While they're very different in their legal theories, the facts and circumstances all relate to the production of It Ends With Us, as well as the PR campaign that went on after the fact. So a lot of overlapping information in these 2 lawsuits.
So how damaging are the text messages between Lively and Baldoni that were mentioned in the New York Times article? And did the New York Times give us a clear picture as to what is going on?
So the text messages are going to be front and center to this case because they're going to show contemporaneously what was happening during the time of the production and what the mindset is of all of the individuals involved. Now, when it comes to a libel lawsuit, there are a lot of challenges. Baldoni and the other plaintiffs in that case, they really have an uphill battle because much of what was reported by the New York Times, even according to their own allegations, were what Blake Lively had put in her complaint filed with the California Division of Human Rights. So because Lively had made those allegations in a publicly filed document, the New York Times was really parroting them and reporting on those allegations themselves. So that lawsuit is going to have a lot of legal challenges because the standards for a libel lawsuit are so high. Even with, especially when it comes to people who are in the public sphere, there's actually additional requirements to show actual malice in those types of lawsuits.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like there will be an easy resolution here. Looking ahead, what could come of these lawsuits and who could see both their wallets and reputation damaged as the dust settles?
Yeah, these lawsuits have a long, long road ahead of them as they play out in the court of law because they don't go away very easily. Most of the time, it comes down to questions of fact, and that's for the jury to decide. But I got to say, Valerie, it seems like in these 2 different complaints, we're really seeing the narrative of each side being laid out in legal filings. And so we're learning a lot about both what Blake Lively's allegations are and the evidence that's in support of that, in addition to Justin Baldoni and where his defense is going to go in response to Blake Lively's lawsuit. You know, we heard from his lawyer today talking about how the text messages, there's going to be a lot more because they were cherry picked when put into Blake Lively's submission, and that the full story is going to tell something very, very different. That's all something that plays out in the court of law.
All right, certainly more to come. Misty Maris, thank you for breaking that down for us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Coming up, the Los Angeles Sheriff's Office is off to a rocky new year with their dispatch system crashing. We'll tell you more about that after the break. But first, you got to see this. There are interstates and expressways, but have you ever heard of a dinosaur highway? Scientists say they discovered one in southern England. This thing is roughly 166 million years old with nearly 200 footprints. Most of those belong to massive long-necked dinosaurs known as sauropods. Researchers even saw one set of tracks that belonged to a carnivorous dinosaur known as a megalopod. More news coming after the break, so stay tuned. Welcome back. Here are some of the stories happening out west that we're following. A Colorado man is facing a slew of charges after allegedly attacking a reporter yelling, "This is Trump's America now." You can see the mugshot of Patrick Egan, who faces a bias crime charge. Egan was still being held on a $20,000 bond as of New Year's Eve. The LA County Sheriff's Department dealing with their own little Y2K after its dispatch system crashed on New Year's Eve. Emergency 911 lines are still operational, but the crash is impacting how information is sent to deputies regarding emergency calls. It's not clear what caused the crash. And in Utah, the Park City Ski Patrol has gone on strike. The union saying the strike was caused by alleged unfair labor practices, while also claiming the resorts have threatened retaliatory measures against striking workers. Vail Resorts representatives called the strike very disappointing. Right now, a community in Honolulu is picking up the pieces after a deadly fireworks blast on New Year's Eve. 3 people were killed and more than a dozen others sent to the hospital. That blast was ignited by a combination of illegally owned fireworks that somehow toppled over. Some first responders there even calling it one of the worst tragedies they've ever seen. Now neighbors are pitching in, cleaning up the debris littered on homes and in the streets, as some of the victims are still fighting for their lives in the hospital.
I'm just here to help out where we can. The neighborhood all stick together, yeah. Everybody's here to help.
Nice boom. I thought it was 12 o'clock. I thought it was the grand finale, but it was the worst finale that ever happened at the end.
Liz Kreutz is following this story from Los Angeles for us.
In Hawaii, a New Year's Eve celebration turning deadly after illegal fireworks exploded at a home in Honolulu, igniting this massive fiery blast that authorities say killed at least 3 people and critically injured more than 20 others.
What should have been a night of joy and celebration has instead become one of sorrow and heartbreak for our community.
The tragic explosion appearing to happen just after midnight of the new year, when videos showed dozens of amateur fireworks lighting up the Honolulu sky.
Every aerial firework is illegal. This situation is out of control, and it cannot be allowed to continue.
Officials say a New Year's Eve party was taking place in the carport of a 3-story home when a bundle of lit fireworks fell over, setting off a chain reaction.
It was a cake bomb, essentially. It was a bomb last night. It was fireworks, but they were put together in a way that they were so explosive, they took the table down, apparently.
According to authorities, 2 women died at the scene and a third died at the hospital, where 24 others, including children, were taken with serious injuries.
All of them had burns. Many of them also had shrapnel injuries.
This video capturing the chaos on the street after the explosion.
It blasted outward like this, and it took the houses in front of it and the cars in front of it.
Adrian Montesinos, who was visiting from Southern California, says he and his friends were a few blocks over from the blast.
It kind of just looked like a ball of fire. It was clear that something was off. It's kind of sad to think about, as we're counting down for New Year's, people are losing their lives.
Hawaii's governor now saying enough is enough, calling for legislation making it a felony to possess large fireworks over 50 pounds.
We're talking about the worst possible war zone injuries that took their lives. And that will continue to happen if we don't take, as a society, real action.
Liz Kreutz, NBC News.
All right, thanks to Liz for that report. Before we go tonight, we're going to check back in with Gotti in New Orleans to see Bourbon Street bouncing back from its brush with terror. That's coming up after the break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. More on the car rental app behind the New Orleans and Las Vegas attackers, plus new security as Bourbon Street reopens. But first, for Amazon's new year, the office is in and remote work is out. Starting today, Amazon workers are back in the office 5 days a week. It's a big shift after many worked remotely since COVID. Some are all in favor of this, like Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy. Those two are tapped to lead Trump's new Department of Governmental Efficiency, and they want federal workers to return to the office full time. But not everyone is sold. Some economists say it's not productive and that remote work will still define the future of work. The car rental app Turo is known as the Airbnb of cars since it allows users to rent a car directly from an owner instead of a company. Coincidentally, it was used by both men in the New Orleans and Las Vegas attacks. NBC's Antonia Hilton has more.
Tonight, car rental app Turo under new scrutiny.
Oh my God.
After authorities say it was used in connection with the deadly terror attack in New Orleans and the Cybertruck explosion in Las Vegas. The peer-to-peer rental app is similar to Airbnb, allowing users to rent a vehicle directly from an owner rather than a car rental company.
You could get the keys to vacation success.
Users can meet car owners in person to pick up the ride or organize a remote handoff in which renters unlock the car using a lockbox code or the app.
Why do you think someone would seek out an app like Turo over more traditional companies like, say, a Hertz?
I think it makes it a little bit more anonymous. So when you go to a place like Hertz or Avis or Budget, one, you're probably in an airport. There are going to be a ton of cameras around. Everybody is going to see you. They have access to data streams that maybe an app like Turo does not.
Turo confirming its platform was used to rent the Ford pickup truck that plowed through New Orleans' Bourbon Street early Wednesday morning, and the Tesla Cybertruck that was filled with explosives outside Trump International Hotel in Las Vegas. Authorities say right now there is no definitive link between the two incidents.
There is going to be a lot of scrutiny on whether or not they are doing best practices relative to their industry peers. Are they doing enough background checks? Are they providing enough safeguards? Because a question will be, what is their responsibility and how far did they deviate from that?
In a statement, a Turo spokesperson saying in part, "We do not believe that either renter involved in the Las Vegas and New Orleans attacks had a criminal background that would have identified them as a security threat. We remain committed to maintaining the highest standards in risk management." Turo has approximately 150,000 active hosts worldwide, with 350,000 active vehicle listings and 3.5 million active guests. Turo's website says Turo screens users when they create an account and again when they book a car. After that, screenings can be triggered for several reasons and may prompt Turo to deny users access to a car or app. However, Turo says it cannot reveal information about its screening process, other than that it involves a renter uploading their driver's license.
Certainly you can trace these things down. But again, with the adapting technology, we're foolish to think that the criminals and terrorists are not going to adapt. In fact, they may actually out-innovate law enforcement, which is what really makes it difficult.
Our thanks to Antonia Hilton for that report. Let's go back to New Orleans, where Bourbon Street is slowly coming back to life after a night of terror. NBC's Gotti Schwartz has more.
In the heart of New Orleans, a cold arms among musicians. Reopening the beloved Bourbon Street with the sounds of strength and resilience.
You're celebrating the city, and at the same time you're mourning. Those are two almost opposite feelings, and yet you guys are doing it through music here, through the vibrancy of the city.
As we know through the great Louis Armstrong, music is a healer.
Glenn David Andrews played on the corner of Bourbon and Canal for some 20 years. Today, his notes are hitting a little differently.
To be in that number, now when the saints go marching in.
We're doing it to memorialize all those innocent people who lost their lives to this senseless act of terrorism. But more importantly, we want people to know that we're proud to be American. I'm proud to be a Louisianan, and I'm proud to be a New Orleans. And that we open, we're not afraid, we're not going to be scared, and we refuse to be terrorized.
And that means bouncing back as quickly as possible.
So we're in the process of just cleaning up.
For the beach bar owner, Christopher Prasad, who says there's no fear when it comes to big, easy hospitality.
It's a very tourist destination. But I bet tonight, all the locals will come out here to show support.
We're open for business.
And whether it's going to a game or lifting a horn.
You understand? All day long.
All of this is the whole way I know how to fight. It's the best way to fight, through music. Music is a healer.
Tonight, here on Bourbon Street, the healing has begun.
And Gotti is with me now. Gotti, we know New Orleans is known for its resilience, certainly on display in the piece there. What is the sense of the mood that you're getting there from people, especially the locals?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to describe, but you see it in that little boy's face, that 3-year-old Carter. You see it in the musicians' faces here, and you even saw it with the woman that was saying, "Hey, we're open for business." It's this openness to the face, and I think what I'm taking from this is almost this dueling emotions, this idea of fearlessness, but also this idea of openness. And in order to be open, in order to be inviting, you really do have to be fearless. And that is what we are seeing out here on Bourbon Street as the public is now invited back here to celebrate, to also mourn the loss of those that were lost here, but also to continue to keep going. It's something that doesn't seem to add up when you first see it, or when you're maybe giving it a passing glance. But when you're here, when you're living it, when you're feeling the music and you're realizing that, yes, people all around you are healing, and they're healing in their way, it is something that is it's a beautiful side to humanity in the face of an unspeakable tragedy. Valerie?
And Gotti, we know that people have posted memorials there, flowers there on the side of the street, so certainly still remembering the victims.
Yeah, they sure are. There's a memorial. I can see it down the way. People have been laughing there. People have been crying there. People have been hugging. It's all of the human emotions right here in Bourbon Street tonight. Valerie?
All right, Gotti, thanks. That does it for us tonight. I'm Valerie Castro. We'll see you tomorrow, but until then, stay tuned now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app, or follow us on social media.